Welcome everyone to our workshop today, the digital battleground, why MACH is your secret weapon in the fight for attention. My name is Sonja Kerl. By day, I'm the president of the MACH Alliance. By night, I run product marketing for Contentstack, and I'm very happy to share the insights with our wonderful G, who heads up our global sales at Contentstack and also the Growth Council at the MACH Alliance. G has many years in helping enterprise organizations figure out why and how to successfully navigate the digital experience transformation. Welcome, G.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And ironically, G, we just noticed this is the first time we're actually running a workshop together, even though we've been working together on this for 2 years, but usually they kind of split us up, don't they? So G is going to walk us through a workshop today that we tend to do with customers and prospects. And it's really important that you guys, if you don't have pen and paper yet, grab it, because this workshop is for you. And we're not going to pitch, big promise. We want to walk you through the typical pitfalls, the misconceptions, and the challenges that we see when organizations embark on this journey. We are recording this webinar, but what we're not recording is the question and answers. So please, as G shares her insights with us today, and you have questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. We will ask those questions anonymously to G then, so that your name and your brand is kept safe. Let's make this as interactive as possible, and I'd love to see your participation so we can make sure you get the most value out of this. So without further ado, G, the floor is yours.
Awesome, thank you. So yes, please, if you haven't already, grab a piece of paper. This is, again, certainly for you. And in the digital world, we're gonna simulate a whiteboard. So I am not gonna go through elaborate marketing presentation. This is really a whiteboard, sticks and figures that we can all master, so that, and then the idea is as I go through this, I'm hoping that if things do resonate, right, then we typically say it is time to change and look to how to do that. So as I go, just please feel free to fill in your particular situation that you're seeing in your organizations. So, we are all grabbing attention or trying to grab attention. What does that mean? And from whom? Right? And really, at the end of the day, it's that customer, right? Customer and connecting with customer is so critical to all of our businesses. But it's not as easy as it sounds. And I think we all know that we're all living in that world. And that is often because customers today live a very mobile lifestyle, right? And by that, I don't mean mobile device. I mean, really, people are on the go. They're very busy and they have all these different touch points on their journey. And on top of that, customers have really grown used to ignoring generic messages, right? They tune them out. And so it's really become important that every brand that when and to what the customers are paying attention and when are they paying attention to you, right? And this is why personalization has become so important. It's a big buzzword, but it's an important one and a valid one, right? Because what we really need to figure out is when is that right place and the right way, right, to reach your audience. But it's virtually impossible to actually really predict, right, when somebody is going to really interact with your company and interact with your brand. And so what we see today is it's not just one thing that you can do and kind of claim victory, right? It's not just about, yes, I have a website and therefore everybody's come, or even mobile applications these days, right? It's more than that. It's about social and digital kiosks and voice applications, all these smart devices that are around us, right? And all of these are really representing digital channels and opportunity to connect and to reach customers. And this is really true whether you are selling to consumers or you're selling to business buyers. And I say that because oftentimes as we're having these conversations, I would see where, you know, brands that are more B2B brands almost try to tune out and say, oh, you know, my customer is not this complex and I'm selling to the business, right? But just keep in mind at the end of the day, it's people. It's people that are behind the business, same people that are making personal purchasing decisions and business decisions and purchasing decisions. So it's really the same very, very busy, very, very mobile persona that we are interacting with on B2C as well as on B2B side. And in fact, you know, as you read studies, and there are a lot of them out there these days, they're predicting that all of us are about to have about, you know, almost 15 connected devices, right, in less than 10 years, right? So this picture is only getting more and more complex, right, on the customer side. And really, at the end of the day, like what are customers looking for? You know, from their perspective, it's very simple. They want a seamless, connected, and very, very relevant experience. But when we look at this picture right here, today we see this situation in a lot of organizations. And what we're finding that is each of these boxes is actually a separate team. And you can fill out which channels you think are relevant to you and coming up, but these are really separate teams. And so it seems that this experience that we're trying to deliver is actually fragmented by nature.
So G, as you in the audience draw your boxes and draw all the boxes of the different channels that a customer could have with you. And then when we say channels, I think it's maybe also important to highlight that your website could actually be multiple channels, right? Because you have an acquisition part. Maybe you have a portal part where your customers can sign in. Maybe you have a support part. Also there, we often see fragmented teams. There is a question in the audience here where typically, I think it speaks to what you just mentioned, that there is separate teams. How can organizations look at the different channels from the customer's perspective rather than their own budget? What is your recommendation when you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, the reality is that they are often separate, and it happens over time, right? Because these new channels continue to be added. And so typically organizations respond by, you know, starting new team, starting new division, and so on. So really what, you know, what we have seen, what's important is to start to zoom out and really look at this picture more holistically, and start to find a commonality and common touch points to bring these teams closer united, right? And really kind of break down these silos that we see. And then again, really happen naturally, just over time. And they will continue to happen if we don't start really looking at it more holistically, because as we said, you know, the 15 devices are coming. We don't even know what channels are going to be emerging, right? And if we continue on this path of every time deploying a new team, it's only going to get more and more complex and more fragmented. So really zooming out and looking to bring these teams together, because at the end of the day, this digital journey for customer needs to be seamless, right? It needs to be consistent no matter which channel the customers engage with, right?
So it's a paradigm shift that has to happen if you want to make it.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes I see, and increasingly so, that a head of digital or a head of customer experience might have the mandate, is I guess the word I'm looking for, to really war room everybody together from the different teams. So maybe find that person that has that ambition in your organization to rally the troops behind that one goal. Cool. Yeah, keep the questions coming. Yeah. This is great. It's great. It helps us to make it relevant for you. Thanks for the
yeah, sure. And you mentioned, you know, the chief digital, that is kind of the new emerging, right, role or transformation executives, right? They're coming in and really looking at that. And so that is the right place and kind of, I think, the right way to start looking at this. So I talked about zooming out, but let's actually zoom in a little bit, right? Like let's actually see, what is happening inside of, one of these teams, right? So again, from the digital perspective, to connect with customers, it really takes a close partnership between the technology teams and business teams, right? And this is really true whether you're working with, internal technology teams and you have a robust team, or agencies and so on. We see these two sides, right? With technology and the business teams trying to work together. And the way that we typically, the setup that we see is that technology teams on their own there, they set up infrastructure, they set up different systems, bring them to life. They create these templates, right? They're trying to optimize and make things easy for the business team. And then the business team is using these templates and these systems to deliver information, right? To deliver content, to deliver the story, to grab the attention, right, from the customer and to engage with the customer. But what we often have seen is that inevitably there is a great new idea, or there's a new product or something new that the business team wants to do that is not supported by a template that they have, right? And so when that happens, the business team reaches back out to the technology team to try to get some help, right? And then so kind of that back and forth happens quite a bit. And this has been really kind of, I would say, classical setup for many, many years. And so we've had the privilege of talking to hundreds of these teams over the years, and we want to get their feedback. And what we found is that, when we talk with the technology teams, developers, they don't really like working this way, because what they feel is that inevitably they're drawn into the business side of things. And they are the ones now that are pushing this information or managing this information in their minds, tinkering with really minutia that they're just not excited about, because they are here to innovate, to create new ways to interact, to use new technologies, right? To propel the organization and themselves forward. And then on top of that, they're kind of just weighted down with a lot of technical debt, right? They have a lot of great solutions, but very heavy solutions, kind of more legacy, we call them monoliths, right? Suites that just have all of these capabilities, but are just really, really heavy. And especially when they're trying to upgrade, right? Which we constantly have to do. We want to do that. And these upgrades in these situations are just so labor intensive, and they just take forever. And so when you compare that to the agility that everybody's looking in, every brand, trying to get out there to the market as fast as possible, those upgrades just kind of become impossible, right? And then what tech teams end up doing is that they just start developing around it, customizing around it, and that makes the upgrades even harder, right? And so it kind of becomes this a bit of a vicious circle.
Do you know that Niall Edwards from the Lego Group, who's on the MACH advisory board, in a podcast, I think we launched it 2 weeks ago, he said in a very British way, he said, I find it peculiar that I would buy an expensive piece of software, and then when I wanted to do something differently, I have to hand in a ticket with the vendor. Then it takes half a year for that ticket to get accepted, another half a year for the version to be released, and then I still need 2 months to upgrade to that version, and then I maybe get what I asked for, but I also get 50 other things that I didn't want and didn't need, but that I need to work around now in that upgrade as well. He called it peculiar, but actually our research on the Mac-Align site showed that it's like 40% of an enterprise organization's budget goes to just that, what you just described, right? That's time they can't use to build new things. It's insane.
Yeah. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for people, for these teams really on the front lines, right? Because that especially on the technology side, the world is moving really fast. It always has. Technology innovations have happened within 12 months, and major innovations, right, with a few years apart. And so yes, when you're kind of stuck with a lot of weight, it is frustrating for sure. And we see this every day. And frankly, the reason why we have a lot of the conversation is because that frustration has been boiling. And to your point, that's exactly kind of the typical, which when you're thinking, you know, from MACH perspective, we're so used to speed. Sometimes we live in our own bubble when, you know, because when we hear it, we're like, oh my God. But that's the reality to your point, right? 40% of organizations are really still, you know, dealing with that and spending a lot of money and time on that. But also, you know, kind of switching to the business side, right? When we're talking to the business user, unfortunately, we don't find a ton of happiness there either. And what we find that it's happening there is that they just feel that this constant kind of dependency, right, on the technology and going back to the tech team is just slowing them down, right? At the time when they have to speed up and they have to, you know, get the information out the door as fast as possible, they just can't. They actually sometimes physically can't. It's another team that does that, right? And even when they try to take things into their own hands, they're kind of stuck with, you know, dabbling technology. And if we take a web, for example, right, that's like HTML writing or some JavaScript. It's just like no business user is really, you know, really comfortable with that fully. And we're always worried, right, if something is going to break. And unfortunately, it does. Right? Yes. Or what we see on the other side is that because these systems are fragmented, right, but these business teams are trying to deliver this seamless experience, they're copying and pasting all over the place, trying to, like, you know, just get the same information from system to system to system. So, you know, in a day in a life, instead of being, you know, just very, you know, focusing on creative and strategically thinking, they're just copying and pasting and, you know, spending time on that.
Especially across these boxes too. I had a story the other day from a company that wanted to roll out a campaign only across their website and their mobile app, right? Two channels, 2 touch points, but the mobile app was firmly in the hands of IT. So they were creating the copy for the website, and then they had to, I think they said call, as in pick up the phone, a developer, so they would then embed the content in that app. And then they had last minute changes and everything went haywire, just because there was no connectivity either on the process or on the technology side. And that's only 2 channels. You know, what if that's 16?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's virtually impossible to actually truly keep that. I mean, that has been the goal for years now. But we just really haven't been able to get there, right? In keeping that consistency, keeping that consistent experience across these, you know, segments, these teams that, you know, tend to be siloed. So yeah, it's absolutely, and really, you know, when we look at this setup, it started back in 2000s, right? Actually, a little bit before 2000s, right? With the web as, you know, a digital channel. And back then that was it, right? It was the web, and all these websites, you know, sprung up for all of us that were there at the time. It was really, really exciting. But then what started happening, everybody was putting out these pages and brands were all over the place. There was not actually brands. So a lot of effort went into just trying to get handle on just the HTML pages that brands have consistency and so on. And you know, we kind of created this environment between tech and business partners. But as we all know, the digital world has changed and has transformed beyond recognition, right? Since the web, and, you know, that being the only channel. And so when we actually zoom back out of, you know, and looking back at this picture, we find that there is actually, you know, inside of this, there are teams, separate teams in each of these each boxes, right? And they are dealing with the same types of challenges, right? Each one of those teams. And what we see is that they're so focused on what they are doing, right? They have their own technologies, they have their own strategies, right, on how to get to market. They even have different ideas of what, you know, what is the best way to grab the attention of that customers. And frankly, sometimes, and maybe more often than we would want to, they could be even competing with each other, right? And then they're so focused on, you know, on just their world and their task. And so, but what that does, it just starts to leave these room for gaps. You know, it just starts to create these gaps in this, again, the journey. And And this is not only bad for customers, right? Because they're not getting really what they want in this consistent way. It's also actually very, very good for the competition. Because these gaps, potentially create an opportunity for the competition, right, to swoop in and connect, right, get that connection to your customer and potentially acquire, right, and take the customers away.
Mm-hmm. Especially if what you mentioned in the beginning, if I am on a journey, if I want to sign up for an insurance or buy something in a shop and I'm switching from my phone to my laptop or whatever, and then the path breaks for me, I have this feeling. And I do start to Google or to go to Amazon or whatever and find another path, because it's just so frustrating. It's a lot of revenue lost in those gaps, isn't there?
It really is. And I am the same, you get busy and you start, maybe on your laptop in 5 minutes, at work, and then that closes, you go to your mobile device and you're trying to, get back onto the same, and it's just, you can't actually pick up where you left off. And I have actually found, frankly, since becoming a mother a few years ago, I moved to mobile. I do all of my shopping and research at 2 a.m. So it's just a mobile device I have. And I am just astonished as to how many brands are just, I actually cannot complete a transaction. Just with navigation going back and forth, I want this, it's broken, I have to re-scroll back. It's actually, kind of, again, being in this business, I feel like sometimes we live in a bubble of like, everybody is able to do that. But just a lot of us are just not quite there, right? And it matters. And I think that, most of us are these days, again, on so many different devices along the day, along the evening and night and so on. So it's a real problem. And these, frankly, these problems are becoming more and more urgent. And we talked about this, 12, 18 months ago, we're saying like they're becoming urgent because there are all these new channels, right? They're coming up, and what is that going to do? That's just going to add. But then we had a pandemic, which we didn't predict, 18 months ago. So that just kind of piled on this, on the complexity of these, and just like the unknown that we have out there that actually, can continue to push us and create this urgency to really do something about this and about these silos and about the way that we have been operating with this. And really kind of, again, if you look at this picture, and these are all different teams and different technologies, there is just so much opportunity that something will break. I mean, it just becomes really, even from the technology perspective, it becomes such a complex situation with so many systems across all these different teams, right? Then inevitably some things is going to break. And unfortunately that, again, is going to, affect the customer experience. So
I have a great question here in the chat, G. How do we surface those gaps? And actually, maybe, is it okay if I gave a quick answer? Because we had just a really great recommendation on that. In a workshop we did last week on personalization, where this is also critical. And the recommendation was, be your own mystery customer. So actually don't start analyzing all your data and Bob and his uncle in a 3 months project. Just write down the top 3 things, the top 3 intents that your customers are having. So don't think about what you want to sell, but think, why are they coming to you? And then you take a few friends and your mom or your kids or whatever, and you give them those tasks and you just try. And you'd be surprised how quickly the gaps become very, very obvious as you put yourself literally into the shoes of your customer. And if you know some already, write them down now, write them down on the questions marks, because all of that will help you to articulate the case internally as well. Did you have other tips how to identify gaps?
No, I mean, I think it's, a lot of times solutions are actually pretty simple. It's just that we run so fast, right? We're, again, so focused on, just what we're doing that we don't do that as enough, right? We don't actually put ourselves in the shoes of the customer, right? And I think, and I go back to even on that B2B, B2C side, right? Where, you know, on the B2B side, you may think that that's even more complex to do, right? To try to imagine, right, what another business is going to be thinking and so on. But it's so crucial to do that in order to really kind of figure out where these, you know, where these breaking points are and where these gaps are. And then I think these also become very evident on the technology side, right? Because what technologists typically are finding is that there's these redundancies, right? There are these redundancies that we're doing, you know, over and over again, and teams that are doing the same things, but not innovating, you know, as much. So that time is so much spent on really repetitive things, right? So those gaps get widened even more. And, you know, really at the end of the day, what we have found is that looking at this picture and looking at, you know, this complexity and looking into the future and understanding that it's only going to get more and more complex, really, if you know, if you continue to operate this way, that the very essence of what you're trying to do of sharing the information and grabbing the attention of the customer, it's going to actually become a bottleneck for your business. It's going to be slowing down your business at the time that you really have to kind of speed up it, you know, more than ever. Your experts are going to continue to waste time on, you know, low value work, and you may even lose experts, right, to just purely dissatisfaction. Because back again, when we're talking to people, there's just a lot of dissatisfaction in what they're kind of end up having to do instead of what they want to do, right, and what they think they can, and especially to propel the business forward. And then worst of all, right, the customers will have a disappointing experience, right, with your brand, and you know, that could decide to send their money elsewhere, right? And we don't want that, right? So I think Sonia, you know, quoting you, I was just in the recent release, right? Is the status quo is just the riskiest. It's just the riskiest proposition, right? And that's really what we're saying here, right? Like it's continuing to do that. We really don't see, you know, organizations being successful. And on the flip side, organizations that have, and this is again a lot of conversations we have, and why we have conversations with brands these days, is recognizing that this has been going on, recognizing how it came about, and it made sense, but going forward it just doesn't anymore, and they need to change, and there needs to be a really kind of fundamental shift in how, you know, organizations internally first, right? How are we experiencing this journey, right? This how are we going to deliver this journey?
Yeah, I think a year ago, well, a year and 2 months ago, that denial that a lot of executives were in was a lot bigger. I think the past year has been a big wake-up call that indeed something does need to change. Especially I think on that first bullet, the time. And what I find interesting is how surprised organizations that still are on monolithic and legacy systems are when we actually quantify, when we say, look, there is a B2B bakery that manages with a handful of people to launch 40 pieces of functionality every month, right? And they go like, what? That would have taken us like half a year, right? And I think that's really interesting in that status quo mentality, that if you haven't experienced what agility really means, it just often sounds too good to be true, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And then on the flip side, it's so exciting when you see it because it's so addictive.
Yeah, exactly.
when you see, you know, when you do see that, and frankly, you know, not to get sentimental, but it's, you know, we all do things and have jobs, and you know, there's a reason we get up in the morning and get excited about what we're doing. And you know, I think for all of us, and definitely for me, it's like, if I, you know, helping, it's addictive, right? When you see somebody that's like, oh my God, like my life has become exponentially better. You just feel, you know, good as a person, and you want to do more and more, right? And you want to like go and shout and say, no, time for change, trust me. This is, you know, it's the times now, right? And really, you know, kind of question, right, maybe out there. So what are these organizations doing? Like, what are they realizing that they need to do? And what have we seen, you know, brands that are really have accelerated in the last few years, especially, frankly, you know, during pandemic, and thrived, right? In this crazy time that we have been, you know, put into. So what these brands have realized is that, yes, managing information, operationalizing all of that, right, is really important, right? But the deeper issue that they've seen is actually the engagement, right? And to create real engagement, and this is something that's kind of been, I think, different, and we didn't really know when we kind of embarked on this, you know, on this journey with brands of what it means. But what we learned is that to create this consistent and connected and compelling experience, right, to create real engagement, not only for the customer, right, and customer is super important, right, that's at the center of our universe, but also for your teams, right? And we've seen where, you know, we've so focused on the customer, rightfully so, right? But again, looking at this complexity, what we have forgotten is that we also have to start with us, right? We have to start internally. We have to really make it possible for these teams to actually work together and not in silos, right? And so we've seen the organizations that have thrived, that they have really looked to and started to design the strategy and technology, right, around the experience that they want people to have. And kind of to your point before, right, like, go test it, right? You know, imagine that customer, right, or get the customer, get your mom to try this, right? So really organize yourself and the technologies and strategy around that experience you want people to have, rather than, you know, just kind of under the hood, right? All of the things that need to happen, all the bits and bytes under the hood, right? So, and how do you do that? The first and foremost, you just need to remove, right, the barriers and friction that we often see, right, between these business and technology teams, right? And when we do that, what we see the organizations do, they're actually able to close these gaps, right? And it's just been amazing to look, because I think for so long, technology and business teams have kind of been at odds, have kind of had this, like, you know, codependent relationship, but nobody really liked, right? And unfortunately kind of drew them further apart, right? And so now what we're seeing is that with these new technologies, right, with the composable, with MACH, with these fast deployments and all these different technologies working together, these teams are now uniting. They're excited. They're actually able to work together and say, hey, I need this business outcome. And the IT team is not saying, oh my God, I have 2 years of upgrades to try to get you there, right? Or 6 months of custom dev. They're like, no, here is the best in breed, right? Here is the solution that will work for you. So so that's really been key in starting to then deliver this you know, amazing experience, right, that the customers want.
It's also one of the biggest myths that I see legacy vendors spread, that if you go towards composable, if you go towards MACH technology, dear business user, beware, you will be more dependent on your IT, where it is actually not a dependency anymore, but like a collaboration. And IT is actually freed up because I don't have to worry about all that legacy stuff anymore, to be creative with the business. It's an amazing storyline that weaves also through all of those talks in the festival here. I can really recommend Mihaela's talk that looks at the psychology of what's happening. But it's beautiful to see, because both expert teams, or it's multiple expert teams, are out of this sad, whiny, finger-pointing rut, and are sharing OKRs, are sharing goals, and can really, you know, side by side, take care of the customer again. It's beautiful to see how that works purely from a psychology aspect, let alone the agility, like the actual clock ticks that improve too.
Yeah, for sure. And really, I think I would say that the key is speed, right? Speed is, as I say, addictive. And what we see is that a lot of the frustrations in the past have been actually around the speed, right? Where on the business side, you always feel like you gotta move at lightning speed. Things are changing, competition is there. You gotta, you know, figure out right messaging and so on.
And IT is so slow.
You look at your, you know, your technology partners, and it's not them, they're just stuck with so much weight, right? And so they just can't, and it, you know, and equally as frustrated, right? So what we see now is just that, yes, I need something, yes, I can get it to you, and it just becomes this a very, very fluid and very, very collaborative environment. And what we've seen absolutely time and time again, when you do that, and brands that have done that, they have absolutely spent their time to market. It's just being at the right place at the right time with the right message. They have created just more productive environments, just more positive workplace, right? They're letting experts really be experts and really focus on what they can provide and deliver, and want to grow the expertise with the company, right? And at the end of the day, the combination, right, of those two has absolutely boosted the return on experience. And we say return on experience, not ROI, right? Because it's broader. What we've seen is that in this day and age, in this complexity, ROI is part of it. It's one way. It's a very, you know, tactical way to measure, but it's bigger than that, right? The success of digital strategy should be measured from different aspects, from customer satisfaction, from that integrated journey and how integrated it is. Certainly there are the ROI calculations, right? And those are probably the easiest, right? Because just the costs of all the weight that, you know, organizations have had, not simply like, you know, licensing, but just for the organization, the time and effort that's been spent, kind of to your point earlier, of every task I have to wait, as Neil said, 6 months, and 6 months, it's just time, right, wasted. That, you know, that I think makes this movement to the new architecture really a no-brainer, right? And then and like I said, it's just been exciting to kind of then watch how quickly these brands are moving. And even when I see companies estimate, right, like how long it's going to take to get, you know, one digital channel and another digital channel, and we've now kind of known to just listen and, you know, watch and aid where we can, but usually it's the you know, the plan is so big, and they end up having to need a fraction of the resources, and just getting there with months, right? Something that they're planning, because they're coming, you know, you're coming from that old world thinking where things did take a long time, right? So even if you, kind of to your point, it's hard to believe, it's okay, you maybe give it some lift, but you just can't give it that much lift, right, in planning. But then it happens, and it's amazing to watch.
You know, do you know what I love about that is there is a point in time in any organization that moves towards MACH where the CTO or the head of development calls and with like a giggle or a chuckle says, business is now catching up to us. Like that moment when they've cleared the backlog of all the marketing and service requests, and they have a clean slate, and they go, what 30 things should we do this month? And then marketing is scrambling to come up with new experiments and creative ideas. But that feeling for the tech leaders that they're finally not the ass anymore, but are finally enabling the business and ahead of it, it's wonderful. It's every single time I see a company make it, there is that point when a head is like, nah, now IT is ahead of the game.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I remember one of the customers actually in the commerce and retail space, when we after they went through the transformation and put some new stack in, the marketing team, when we talked to them, they're like, yeah, we work in an agile environment. I'm like, that's a very techie term. The fact that you're saying like agile, we're agile moment here. I knew that they were working so closely with IT, massive, because now they're starting to sound the same. They're actually starting to, use each other's terminologies, and they have gone from, they are saying just simple decision at the end of, pushing something out would take, 2 to 3 weeks, because you have to go through a lot of the review cycles, and you have to be, staged up every review cycle, and that went down to about 3 hours. So it is it's hard to imagine that, that kind of change. But yeah, and once they're on that journey, it's just more and more and faster, and then it really does come down to just innovation. Really, how quickly can you come up with new ways, with new ideas to grab the attention of the customer, right? And kind of focus on that, and not be, held back by legacy.
And creativity is a great bottleneck to have, right? That's a luxury problem.
Yes. That's they say there's a good problems to have. I don't know about that, but there's still problems. But still, if we had to choose, right?
So we've got about 3 minutes left, you guys. This is your chance to ask G anything. Pop those questions into the Q&A, and thanks for the ones you put in already. G, what's the #1 objection you get when you have this conversation with enterprises from the executive level?
Honestly, change is hard. It really is. And I think that it's a valid question that everybody has. And I think that we just need to always keep that top of mind. It takes time, right? And there is also a healthy level of skepticism, because a lot of special executives, right? We've been around for a while. We've seen the federations. So when you really, start hearing these things, they're kind of too good to be true. So there is some level of skepticism that I see. And also sometimes, just really defending that status quo. I see people kind of sit back and say, no, we're doing all of that. And, maybe it is actually getting done. But when we talk to the teams of what it takes to do that, and for the executives to be able to say that, they're just about to quit. It's just so much effort, so much, time and waste, and so on. So yeah, I think it does take, a bit of time. I think these are the right kind of question. This is why we like to have this conversation, right? It's just really to figure out, okay, if you find yourself, in this story, then it's time to, ask, is there a better way to do it? And always to look, into what others are doing and examples and so on. I think that always speaks volumes, right? It's just being able to see real examples, which I think now, frankly, I don't think that MACH is a fad. I think that, there's a lot of thought about that, a couple of years ago, but it really is the future, right? And so I think it's just a matter of when. But status quo is powerful, and change is hard. So I would say that's typically, it takes a moment. But once they do, take a look, or start asking questions, kind of the aha moments to come pretty quickly. And testing, what's nice in this environment is that you can test it in real life really fast. So even for all the skeptics, right, if they're able to just kind of actually see it in action quickly.
2-day hackathon, right? Not a big project.
Really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so my takeaway from that is, don't just look at the technology change, also have change management actively involved if you want to navigate that. And if you're looking for proof points and fantastic stories, you can find those on macalliance.org and on contentstack.com. There is enough ammunition there for you to convince your stakeholders. If you need help, find us, info@contentstack.com. And we're also going to share some additional information in the follow-up to this workshop. G, thank you so much for sharing your experience navigating through this crazy year as well, and helping enterprises do that gracefully. And if anybody wants you to rerun this in their boardroom, I'm sure they can count on you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. And also just, I know sometimes it's hard, but just hear actually experiences and dialogue and so on is really great. And I think, we usually walk away with even, more kind of aha moments that are very specific, right, to each enterprise, because, there are certainly uniqueness to how different brands are running their companies. So.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, G. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. This was really, really helpful, and I look forward to continuing the conversation. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.